Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone.
Waalaikumsalam. Good afternoon,
Waalaikumsalam.
Prof.
Good afternoon.
Waalaikumsalam. Good afternoon, Prof.
Hi, nice to hear you all. So, okay, so welcome back. We have our 1 hour session now today. And as I mentioned yesterday, today we're going to start to use our 1 hour class for helping you to prepare for your assignment 2. And then yesterday after our class, I sort of got the idea, well, maybe I should do something around the topic yesterday of the lecture, the positive youth development. So I wasn't really sure. So I figured, well, I would just ask you guys. Okay. So many of you, I think, saw the WhatsApp. And just to show you the results of your vote, of your poll yesterday. So we can see here, overwhelmingly, you guys voted to have the interview session today, rather than the PYD activity. So this is, it was very helpful. Thank you for your feedback. It helped me to plan the class better, just to make sure that I was presenting the most relevant topic for you. Okay, so we're gonna discuss a little bit today about interviewing, okay, in relation to your assignment. So before we start, I just want to point out a couple of things here on the Putra Blast. So from now on, the attendance link is not going to be included in the weekly. I don't know how you say it. What you call it? The you know, the little each week, you know, in Putra Blast, there's, as you can see here, like this, week 8. Okay. Usually there's a link here for attendance. What I've learned, and I'm still learning how to use Putra Blast, obviously. What I've learned is that you don't need to do that. You can just put the link once at the top of Putra Blast, at the top of the class here, and then each week you come in, you can just click on it. Okay. So like for today's class, you just go to the top of the Putra Blast, the class screen, and you can just click on the Thursday attendance link. Okay. So I won't be including it every week now. It'll be just here, sort of a stationary link. All right. Just so you know. So don't forget to click on it during the class, okay? But it won't be showing up in the individual class links. All right. And so, okay, so qualitative interviewing. So as most of you know, if you don't know by now, you should know that you are going to be doing this assignment, and hopefully you've already got started on it. At least you're thinking about what kind of issue you want to address with your program proposal. All right. And one of the things I've asked you to do is to talk to some people, some young people, some youth. Could be your peers, your classmates, could be young people from outside, wherever. But other youth who are experiencing some type of difficulty or issue that you want to address with a program. Okay, so that's the proposal is the assignment, and I gave you some examples in previous weeks, so you can use those as I mentioned yesterday. But one of the things I've asked you to do is to collect a little bit of data to better understand the problem and how it's being experienced by these different young people. Okay, so one of the ways we usually do that is usually we ask our students can do interviews. All right. But a lot of students, I guess, if you haven't had any experience doing research, you probably don't know how to do interviews, like research interviews, what we call qualitative interviews or in-depth interviews. Okay, so I thought I would just give you a brief overview of it to help you to collect your data for your project. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a short video. It's only about 10 minutes or so. And it's an example of what a good qualitative in-depth interview looks like, all right, how it's conducted, okay? And so as you're watching the video, I just want you to keep track of these 5 things. I mean, just watch it in general and look at how the interviewer carries out the interview, okay? But I want you to pay particularly close attention to these things. The way that the interviewer interacts with the interviewee, the participant or the respondent, okay? So how they make eye contact, how they present themselves, how they speak, okay? And then also how they ask their questions, especially the wording of the questions, okay? How they ask their questions. And then how the interviewer listens, all right? One thing about qualitative interviews, they're not like surveys. You know, like you do a survey, someone asks you, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about this? Or they ask you, you know, they just ask you a very sort of what's called a closed-ended question, right? Do you agree with this? You disagree with this? Or they'll just ask you for a very short answer. Qualitative interviews are what we call open-ended. So it allows the respondent to speak a lot, right? To share their ideas and their opinions, right? Their perspectives. So, but when the researcher does that, they have to listen very carefully to what the person's saying. So look at how they ask questions and how they listen. Okay, and then what to what extent do they take notes or write? Like take notes during the interview. Do they take a lot of notes? They just take a few notes? What do they do in terms of note taking? And then the style of interaction or how she speaks to the respondent. Okay, so what kind of way does she interact? What kind of demeanor does she have? Just observe, yeah, just observe, and then we'll discuss after we watch the video. We'll discuss it, and then I'll explain a bit more in detail. Okay. So is it right? Can I show the video? Are you ready for it?
Yes.
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 So
Yes.
do you see the screen now? The video screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Hello, my name is Allison Jones. I understand that you've taken a series of chart training workshops. I'm doing qualitative evaluations about the training so we can learn more about how participants think about their training and what they've learned. So I'd like to ask you about your experience with the chart trainings. Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay, great. Can you tell me your name, please?
my name is Shay Bloomer.
Shay Bloomer, okay. Can I call you Shay?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. And Shay, what do you do for a living? What's your profession?
I'm a nurse.
You're a nurse. How long have you been nursing?
I've been a nurse for 12 years.
Oh, interesting. So first I'd like to start out and just kind of get your immediate reaction to the training, your memories of how it felt to be in the training. What was your favorite part of the training and your least favorite part of the training?
Well, I would say that my favorite part of the training was that the facilitators really took time to have discussions with us, and it was a very open kind of discussion that we had about a number of the topics that we were discussing, and I felt like I wasn't just being told things. It wasn't a one-way sort of experience. We were very much learning from one another, and it was exciting to be in a group with my peers and to be able to discuss the issues that we confront every day and learn different ways of approaching them.
Mm-hmm. I know the training was a while ago, but I'm wondering if in these conversations that you were having with the facilitators and with some of your colleagues, can you remember any particular topic that was especially interesting for you?
Well, one of the topics that we talked about was taking sexual histories. And as nurses who are working in HIV care and in testing, it's often important for us to take a sexual history, but it can be very uncomfortable. For example, depending on who the patient is. We have patients who come in who seem too young for us to need to take a sexual history, patients who frankly seem too old for that to still be relevant. And it was interesting to talk about how we all sort of approach it in a different way, and how a number of us, frankly, were fairly uncomfortable with the topic. But having this kind of discussion about it really helped me to feel more empowered to talk to all of my clients about their sexual history.
Mm-hmm. So I heard you say that you're now taking these sexual histories differently. And I'm wondering if, because you're taking them differently, if different kinds of information actually comes out from your consultation with the patient.
Yeah, I think certainly, because The truth is that I was so uncomfortable doing them before that I often sort of skipped over it or found ways to just ask yes/no questions and get through it. And so now that I'm more comfortable taking the history, I'm actually doing it with all of my patients.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any ways that that might affect the actual care the patients receive?
Definitely, because before I wasn't thinking about a number of these patients in terms of needing the kinds of services like HIV testing, and now I realize that the elder generation is sexually active and I'm taking their sexual history and some of them do need to be tested.
Can you tell me anything else that you remember learning from the training?
Well, one of the things that we discussed a lot at the training was patient confidentiality, and I feel like I was aware that confidentiality was important. I was not aware of the many ways that we can accidentally violate patient confidentiality. And it's caused me not only to look at my practice personally, but to also be thinking about the way things sort of happen in our clinic, because there are a number of things happening in our clinic that I actually think are making it harder for us to maintain patient confidentiality.
That's interesting. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, for example, we have a very small waiting area that's directly in front of where all the patient records come out, and we have a limited number of consultation rooms. So a number of times during the day, conversations need to happen among providers, and there aren't very many places for that to take place. And often what ends up happening is that at the desk where people are waiting to sort of sign in and things like that, we are having discussions about patients. And we always sort of I think of that desk as being a barrier, but in fact it doesn't block sound. And so I think that that might be an issue, that we need to have a safe space for providers to be able to have discussions about patients.
So it sounds like this is something that you've noticed at your workplace, that this area may not be, it may have been treated as a confidential space when in fact it's not. Have you noticed anything that's changing in addition to your own recognition of this?
Well, I've started whispering and trying to keep my voice very low. And I've talked to other colleagues about it to try to find another space.
And how's that going for you?
Well, we have limited resources, and so we're working on trying to identify a space, but because we really need the consultation rooms to see patients, it's been challenging.
So can you tell me about any of the activities that were done in the training that have really stuck with you?
Well, one of the activities that we did was an activity where we talked about the different words for the body parts that are in our vocabulary, because so many of our patients don't use the sort of scientific terms that we use. And so I think it helped to sort of desensitize us to that language and get us comfortable with all the language that patients might come in using. And so it was both sort of entertaining and also a little awkward at the same time.
I'm hearing you laugh as you say it, so it...
Yeah, it was fun to have sort of this group of professionals in there sort of throwing around this vocabulary. Yeah. Another activity that we did that I thought was really effective was that we watched these short videos that showed us something happening at a facility that might contribute to stigma and discrimination. And then we had really, really great discussions as a group around whatever it was that we were sort of seeing in the video. And, you know, those were things that I think that a lot of people in the room could relate to and had seen happen in their own facilities. So it was good to be able to have a discussion about them.
Did everybody seem to have the same reaction to the videos when you listened to them or watched them?
I would say that people universally seemed to acknowledge that what was happening in the video was wrong. But people had sort of different reactions about why it was happening or what could be done differently.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very helpful. Can you think of any additional trainings that CHART might provide which would help reducing stigma and discrimination at the facility for people living with AIDS?
Well, I think that at least in my facility, I don't really think patients are discriminated against. So I'm not sure what additional training would be necessary.
Okay. So let me make sure that I have it right and I wrote it down correctly. So I think what I have here, you mentioned earlier, I thought I heard you say that there are some things that are being done differently in terms of conversations around the desk and keeping people's voices low. So that seems to me to be a change, and now I'm hearing you say that there's not a change. So I'm wondering which part of it I'm not understanding correctly. Can you help me with that?
Well, you asked about additional training, and I'm not sure that people need additional training to change their attitudes. I think that, like what I mentioned about what's happening at the desk, and that's not people intentionally jeopardizing patient confidentiality. It's sort of a function of the limitations of our setting. So I think that some of what we need assistance with is sort of the place where we're working and how to have those kinds of conversations that are out of patients' hearing range. But I don't think that it's intentional. I don't think people are intentionally discriminating against patients.
So that's a really good example of a problem or an issue that exists at a facility that can't obviously be changed by training, but something else needs to happen, a different flow of patients or a different flow of staff so that they can discuss patients. Can you think of any other structural issues at the facility that might threaten confidentiality?
No, not really.
Okay. So that sounds like that's the primary one.
Okay, I'm not going to play the whole video, but it's only a few more minutes anyway. But I wanted you to at least see that part of it. And so, from what you saw, going back to those five things that I showed you earlier, let's just bring those up again. Okay, so in terms of eye contact, where's my chat box? Sorry, it's not showing up. That's weird. I cannot bring my chat box up. Anyway, so eye contact, wording, how she asks the questions, how she words the questions, the way she listens, the way she takes notes, and then her style of interaction. In terms of these things, let's start with eye contact. What did you notice about the way she makes eye contact during the interview? And one thing about qualitative interviews that you should know is that qualitative interviews are, as you can see, they're more like a discussion, they're more like a conversation, less than an actual very formal interview. They're not a very formal type of interview. They're more of a conversation, a discussion. Okay, and they are very effective for getting people's opinions about things, right? So let's ask about eye contact. What did you notice about the way she made eye contact with the nurse? You can either say it out loud or you can write it in the chat box. Either one is fine. What did you observe?
Well, I think that it is just, how the usual people talk to someone else. So the eye contact is, for me, the eye contact is bearable because some people didn't like us to stare at them for a long time.
Okay.
But we can see that she is, yeah, just like what Harry said, maintaining eye contact for the whole interview session. But I do hope that she can reduce making eye contact, because I just can feel that the one that she interviewed is not feeling that comfortable.
Okay. All right. Yeah, eye contact. There's actually some cultural issues related to eye contact. So of course, this interview was conducted, I think, in the U.S. And in Western culture, it's quite common to maintain eye contact when you're discussing with somebody. But in Eastern cultures, it's often not. So it is a matter of what's comfortable given the setting, the cultural setting, and also like gender. So like if you're a male and you're interviewing a female, or a female interviewing a male, like in our Eastern culture here, of course, it's not really appropriate to be just staring the whole time. So, but eye contact is important during an interview only because when you're like, for example, if you're the nurse, like I'd like to see that the person asking the questions is interested in what I have to say, right? So like if I ask you a question and then I'm like looking down, or I'm looking over here, or I'm like, playing with my phone, and you're answering the question, you're like, what is this person doing? They're not even interested in what I'm saying, right? So the importance of contact, whichever one is culturally appropriate, right? Of course, whether you stare or you sort of look down and look away a little bit, but the purpose is that you want to make sure that the person responding is, you're showing interest in what they're saying. Okay, so you're not distracted doing other things. If you notice, she did take a few notes during the interview, but she didn't the whole time sit there and write, right? Like, okay, so that's really important as well, is that maintaining that sense of like you're interested in what they're saying. Now, for you guys, most of you will be doing your interviews, I'm assuming online. Okay, so it's a little bit different, right? You're not literally face to face, but it is sort of the same principle. If you're doing an online interview, like through Zoom or something, you at least want to show that you're listening to the person, okay? And you're okay. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like you want to show interest in what they're saying. That motivates them to keep talking. Okay. So eye contact is very important, and then not just eye contact, but how you show interest in what the person is saying. Okay. So yeah, so Desmond, eye contact does play an important role. Okay. And maintaining eye contact. So maintain whatever eye contact you feel is culturally appropriate. Okay. Whether it's like constant, or if it's you look down a little bit, whatever. But whatever is culturally appropriate. But make sure that you show your interest in what they're saying. That's the most important thing. Okay. And then how about the wording of her questions? How she worded her questions? What did you notice? Any observations? How she asked her questions?
For me, I think the nice using a nice word, and they want the some introduce before starting to discuss about the problem.
Okay. All right. Hazik, when you say nice words, can you be a little bit more specific? What specifically type of nice words?
Very understand to
Okay.
each other.
All right. Okay. All right. So yeah, so she started out, if you notice, thank you, Hazik. You'll notice when she started out, she didn't just jump right into the interview and ask questions. She first introduced herself, right? She explained the purpose of the study, why she's interviewing that person. Okay. So yeah, you want to provide an introduction, introduce yourself, just common courtesy, right? And you want the person to be relaxed. It should not be very formal or very like, uptight. No, relax. It's just a conversation. Just going to ask them some questions about. So for example, if you guys are doing a study like on, you're interviewing other youth, maybe your peers or something, maybe young people who are having problems with depression during COVID-19, or either something about maybe losing their job, or having trouble getting income or whatever. First just introduce and just tell them what you're doing. You're doing this is a class project, and you're trying to develop a program. et cetera, et cetera. So you need some information about what young people like yourself are experiencing. And so you're just going to ask them some questions, but there's no, and it's a very sort of laid back, informal kind of thing. Okay, so you want to put them at ease so that they're free to share. They feel no pressure in sharing. Okay, so yeah, so thank you, Hazik. That's good. So, and then using nice language. Yeah, absolutely. Using nice language. Um, uh, okay, so Mimi added in here using direct question, no bombastic jargony words. Yeah, so very clear, very simple questions, really. If you notice, her questions are not very, very, like you said, bombastic. They're very sort of straightforward kind of questions, and they're easy to understand. That's very important. You don't want to make it too confusing. Don't ask these really long questions, and then the person's like, what are you asking me? I have no idea. Make them short, make them simple. Yeah, straightforward and clear. Good, Hanim. Okay, so in addition to that, what about the way she worded the questions specifically? If you notice, the answers to the questions were very long, right? The nurse, she started, I mean, most of the questions, she talked for a long time. What kind of wording, what kind of question wording allows for that? Did you pick up on that? For example, she didn't say, okay, so Hanim said she worded the question, do you? But if you look back, do you? Yes, but then she sort of elaborated. Did she ask questions like, was the training interesting to you? Yes, no, right? She didn't ask questions like that. How did she ask her question? There were very few yes, no answers, right? There were these really long answers. Yeah.
Through his experience.
Open-ended question.
Yes, thank you.
Experience.
Yeah. So exactly, Hazik, you want them to talk about their experiences. How? By asking open-ended questions. Can you tell me a little bit about the training? What was it like for you? Right? That kind of a question, right? Then the person cannot say yes or no. They have to describe, and then she starts talking about all these things. So you want to make sure that you ask open-ended questions, all right? Or if you have to ask a close-ended question, like, did you find the training enjoyable? Yes, no, okay. If you want to do it, that's fine, but then follow up with a open-ended question. So, did you find the training enjoyable? Yes. Okay. Can you tell me why? What about the training made it enjoyable? Okay. And then, oh yeah, it'll be because of this, because of that, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Then you're going to get the long answer. Because exactly what you said, Hazik, you want them to explain and describe their experience. In order for them to do that, you cannot ask close-ended questions. They're just going to say yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. Okay. And you're not going to really get any information from them other than those very simple answers. Okay. So when you ask open-ended questions. Now, what kind of questions are open-ended questions? How questions, how do you find, blah, blah, blah. Why questions, right? So why do you think it's so difficult for you during COVID-19 to find work, for example? Then they'll give all their possible reasons, Tell me about, and then you can even ask them to describe, like you said, Hazik, about experience. So maybe they're feeling some anxiety or depression during COVID-19. Ask them to describe what it's like for them, So what is it like? What is this depression like for you? What does it feel like? How does it affect your daily life? How does it affect your ability to study, for example, or whatever? So get them to explain themselves and describe. Those kinds of questions and answers are going to give you a lot of insight into really what's happening. Okay. So that's why in program planning, there are, of course, times we want to ask close-ended questions for certain things, right? If you want specific information, you ask close-ended questions, like how many times a day do you blah, 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 or how much money did you make last month? Or, those kind of questions, of course, they should be close-ended. But if you really want to understand people's experiences, which will help you to plan your program, you want to ask them open-ended questions, okay? So yeah, so very good. Yeah, so you guys got it. Ask open, very straightforward questions, short questions, not very long, clear, open-ended, let them explain themselves, etc. Okay, so good. The last one, sorry, the next one, listening. Okay, what did you notice about how she listened?
For me, she listened properly to the interview.
and as she is not interrupting and let her finish her words. Then she also show body language like nodding, that show understanding, which means that she is properly listening towards the interviewee.
Excellent. Yeah, that's an excellent answer. Yeah, absolutely. So listening is not just with the ears. Okay, that's exactly what you mean. Listening is body language, right? So the way she listened what's called actively, active listening. You're following along, nodding the head, okay, right, okay. And then you can tell she was really listening because of the way she asked follow-up questions, right? So she didn't just ask a question and then that's it, move on to the next question. She asked a question and then she said, okay, so from what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like you are, this, and that. So that shows that she's really listening to what they're saying. And then she's asking follow-up questions that relate to exactly what she heard. Okay. So yeah, so she listens attentively, right? And she nods her head, and then she asks very relevant follow-up questions. And that's really proof that you're listening. Because you could ask a question and then just totally zone out, right? And you're not even listening to what they're saying. Okay, okay. Then they're done, and you just go to the next question on your list. Okay. Right. That's not really listening. So the reason that she does it is that she can ask good follow-up questions and get more detailed information. Okay, so listening is really important in a qualitative interview for all those reasons. Okay, so it's really so active listening is really important. And feel free to ask a follow-up question. Like if you hear something and you say, "Well, I'm not sure what they're trying to say," or "I'm not really clear what they mean," it's perfectly okay to say, I'm really sorry. I didn't quite understand that last part. What do you mean by that? Mana apa tu? I'm sorry, I missed that. It's okay just to say I didn't really understand you. At least that will force them to clarify their answer. Okay. So listening is very important. Okay. And then how about the way she used her note taking, right, during the interview? I don't know if you caught the beginning, but at the very beginning, she asked, "Is it okay if I record this interview?" All right. And then she had her, I guess, little handheld recorder, or maybe it was her hand phone. I don't know. But she used something to record the interview. Okay. Now, that's common practice. Like if you're going to do an online interview like this, obviously you can just use Zoom to record the interview. All right. But you need to ask. Okay. You need to ask the respondent. Okay. Just ask them, is it okay if I record this session? Because I need to use it to analyze the data, because this is data. Okay. I need to go back and analyze the response. At that point, you need to tell them and reassure them that this interview, no one else is going to see it but you, or no one else is going to hear it but you. All right. So that's very important that they feel safe. They feel, oh, okay, it's confidential, the data. All right. So how did she take notes or did she do much writing during the interview? What did you notice? What did you notice about her?
I think I think there's no, like, she's doesn't exaggerating in writing notes, because we can see that yes, she's taking note, but at the same time, even though she's taking notes, but she's still focusing on what have been said by the the one that she interviewed. So we can see that she also maintain eye contact, like even though she's writing, jotting down notes, but she's still maintaining the eye contact with the interviewee.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Yeah, so because she's recording the interview, she doesn't have to write down all that much, right? Everything's being recorded. So the only reason for writing notes is just to make a note of maybe some main points. Exactly, Amir, thank you. Main points that you want to follow up on, or you hear something, not sure what they mean here, need to ask a follow-up question or something. It's just a note. It's just, things, reminders, whatever it is, but not the substance of not the whole interview. Tabaya, there's no need to, because it's being recorded. Yeah, just key points, exactly, Hazik. Main points, key points, maybe certain items that she wants to follow up on afterwards, just to make a note, reminder to herself, okay? But like you said, Mimi, the main focus is to maintain the eye contact and to listen, right? Because if you take too many notes, you start to phase out and you're not really listening to what they're saying. Okay, so you want to avoid that. Yeah. So don't take too many notes during an interview. Just take as many as you need to, just to remind yourself of these key points. Okay, and then style of interaction, how she spoke. You guys kind of already answered that, using that sort of nice style that she had. And she even said things like "thank you," for the response, and again, it's being polite, and being encouraging people to answer the questions, showing that you're interested, that what they're saying is important. These are sort of kind of many of these things are kind of basic human communication skills, really, just being a good listener and all that. Okay. And the whole idea behind this, you want people in a qualitative interview, you want them to explain as much as they can, right? Because that's all data for a study. That's all data. Everything they say is data that you're going to use to plan your program or to analyze. Okay. So these are some of the things. Now, how about, I didn't ask this in the list here, but how about the questions she asks? Where does she get the questions from? Like usually in a study, you do a survey, right? So a survey is different than this kind of an interview. Because a survey is usually, Likert scale 1 to 5, right? Something like that. These questions are all open-ended. So where does she get her questions from? So how do you know what kind of questions or what questions to ask in an interview? Anybody want to take a guess? Okay, so let's think about your projects, right? So you're trying to develop a program, a youth development program. You're going to propose a youth development program based on some kind of felt need or unfelt need, depending on what you come up with, what you find. Okay, so how do you know what questions to ask? Where does she get her questions from? Who'd like to guess?
Maybe from article journal by doing research first.
Yep. Okay. All right. And then from what aspect of the research? Like what would she how would she use those articles to come up with interview questions? What do you think? Okay, so let's take an example of smoking. Okay, so youth who smoke. All right, so this is the issue you want to address. Okay, and you want to come up with a program to get young people to stop smoking. What kind of questions are you going to ask, and how do you know what questions to ask?
Well, the first thing first would be asking why they
Why they
started
smoke?
smoking.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so if your study is about smoking, you start with a main, what we call a research question. Okay, so what is the main research question we want to know? We want to know why they smoke, because whatever program we come up with, again, we have to, like I said in the class yesterday, we have to address the need, right? What is the need? Okay, so we want to understand why they smoke. So for example, if they say, well, smoking relaxes me, right? Okay, does that mean that they're facing a lot of stress and anxiety? Okay, because maybe the main issue here is the fact that they have a lot of stress in their lives. So then our program for to get them to stop smoking can address the stress and the anxiety, right? Rather than the smoking, because the smoking is it's like a symptom, right? We talked about symptoms yesterday, right? In the medical model. The smoking is actually something. The root cause is the fact that they are having a lot of stress. So our program can then focus on addressing stress, right? The root cause, right? And then relate that to quitting smoking. Okay. Another reason why they smoking, they like to feel cool, right? Smoking makes them feel cool. In other words, it makes them feel like adults, right? They feel, so that helps us to understand the main cause, the main reason behind it. So smoking itself is just a symptom, really. There's an underlying need that the young people are, yeah, exactly, Haziq, influenced from friends. All right. So maybe they are being influenced by their friends, right? And so your program can focus on dealing with peers, right? And how to say no to peers, or maybe their skills related to how they choose who to hang out with, right? Or who their peers are, stuff like that. So these kind of interviews help us to get to the root causes behind these issues that we want to study. Okay, so by allowing us to understand the root causes, then we can develop the appropriate program that's going to really address the root cause. Okay, so building up, for example, if they have problem with like social, they're not very social, or they have a hard time meeting friends that are not influencing them to smoke, for example. Maybe the program can focus on social competencies, building up their social competencies, right? So they can go out and meet better friends, or say no to their friends, or communicate with their friends to tell them that they don't want to smoke, stuff like that. So we get to the root cause. Okay. So yeah, and the suggestion before about using literature like journal articles can help us to understand in previous studies, what have they found about the reasons why young people smoke, right? So okay, yeah, anxiety, pressure from friends, all these things. Then when we go into our interviews, we can ask those kind of questions, right? So, you're smoking, and so how long have you been smoking? Okay, whatever. What are some of the reasons why you smoke? They'll say, oh, well, my friends do it, and right. And then we can ask appropriate follow-up questions based on what we've read in those journal articles, right? In that literature. Okay. That'll give us some idea of what kind of things to ask. Okay. So the purpose of these interviews is really, again, to get to the root cause. Okay, try to get to the root cause. Okay, the underlying needs that are sort of producing the problem or the issue. So if you can do that in your interviews, then you can really come up with a really strong program, or a program that's really going to be effective and address the root cause. Okay. All right. Any questions about that? Anything? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if you're going to do an interview like this, you don't need a lot of questions, actually, because they're open-ended, right? And people tend to say a lot of things. They take up some time. You only need, maybe 8 or 10 questions at most that you want to ask. Okay, so if you can, based on the problem and the issue you want to sort of address, if you can come up with, maybe 7, 8, maybe at most 10 questions, that you want to plan. And then when you go do the interview, there may be other things that come up in the interview you want to ask them, and that's fine. You can always add questions. You can always add stuff if you want to add. Interviews are not like surveys where you have to stick to the questions and ask them exactly how they are in the survey. You can adjust it however you want, however you see fit. The key is to get that data, to get them to really talk about the issue. And so whatever questions do that, that's what's most important. That's what's most important. All right. Okay, so let's now just do a quick, just for a couple minutes. I want you to think about the problem or the issue that you're planning to work on. And if you're not even sure yet, maybe you haven't even gotten started yet, maybe you can just think about it right now and choose something just for the sake of exercise. Choose an issue, a problem that you want to do this project on, that young people are facing now. See if you can come up with a a few interview questions, you know, maybe just 2 or 3 to start with. Yeah, questions that you might want to ask them during the interview. Okay, so go ahead and do that on your own, and then I'll ask you to share your responses here. So just take a few minutes to do that. Remember, this assignment you can do with a partner, right? So you may want to choose doing it with someone else, and maybe you've already um, discussed that with your partner, what topic you want to do. Okay, so just take another minute or two, and then we'll ask for some volunteers to share your questions. Okay, so were you able to come up with something? Anyone want to share your, just you can just name the topic quickly. What is the topic of your assignment or your proposal? And then maybe a question or two that you came up with. Who'd like to volunteer? Who's in the volunteer spirit? Mimi? You're the only, maybe you're the only one with your camera on. So I'm looking at you.
Basically, we haven't decided yet what kind of topic that we will do, but we do have a few suggestions. So
Okay.
one of the topic suggestion is single parent.
Okay. Good
Like
topic.
um yeah. So basically, maybe the example question that we will ask during the interview. Maybe the first one is how does it feels how does it feel to live in a single parent situation? Like what are the maybe the challenges that this youth face?
Okay. So in your study, the youth are the parents, or they are the children of single parents?
Pardon?
In your the study you plan to do, I mean the program you plan to do, the youth themselves are the parents, or they are the children of the parents?
I know the children.
Oh, okay. So their parents are.
They as a children, yeah.
I see. Okay, okay. No, because the reason I ask is because, like you have things like you have things like teenage pregnancy where young people are single
Mm-mm.
parents themselves. That's why I wasn't clear. Okay, so growing up or living in a single parent family. Okay, yeah. So I think I mean, of course, you'd have to do some reading on that topic, but that's a good one. I mean, that's a good question. How does it feel? You also may want to start the interview just by asking them to get, just to sort of see just ask them like, what are some of the major challenges or main challenges of growing up in a single parent family? And then that way they can sort of choose where they want to direct the interview. Do you know what I mean? Like they may want to focus on the economic part of it. Like it's, my family has a hard time making, my mother or my father has a hard time making ends meet, or they may talk about the fact that they don't get enough time with their parents, or maybe the psychological difficulties, so they can sort of choose which is the most important topic that's affecting them. So it's usually good in interviews just to start off with a sort of general question like that, to let the interviewee, the participant, let them kind of direct the conversation. Okay. So, but your question is a good one also. Like, how does it feel? That's also another good sort of general question to start off with. Yeah. All right. So that's good. Good topic too. I think it's a topic that we don't hear much about in Malaysia, actually. So that's a good topic to do. Okay. Thanks, Mimi. Anyone else want to share? What is your idea at this point? What are you thinking about? Anyone, please? Volunteers?
Doctor,
Okay, Kim.
can can we do something regarding the the problem with youth and social media?
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, you should. That's a very important topic. There's many problems related to youth and social media. Is there anything specifically you wanna look at? Like addiction, for
Basically,
example. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, it's like how we can see that youth these days are really into doing something just to be in the center of social media. It's like how some people are doing stupid things just for them just for them to be famous. Just like how we can say there's a case where a teenage boy he threw a cat just for his TikTok videos,
Wow.
and then people lodge a police report to him, and then he
Yeah.
was, yeah, and
No,
then even the swab test
uh-huh.
thing that is currently in the center of attention in the social media. I seriously think that these people are the people that seek to be cyberbullied
Yeah.
and slut
Yeah, this
shaming.
right. It's like this attention seeking behavior. Like they're seeking attention by doing these kind of stupid things. Well, yeah, I mean, that is a very important issue. If you can find a way to sort of you know, it has to be specific enough that you can address it with the program. You know what I mean? So you have to identify what really is the issue. Once you can do that, then absolutely you should pursue it. It's a very good topic. But just make sure you're defining it clearly and properly. Do you know what I mean? So you may have to do, you know, you're going to have to do some reading to find out what exactly that is. Is it, you know, there's sort of, is it attention-seeking behavior? Is it, God, I don't even know what you would call it, but there must be a term for it, and there must be people who have studied it and who are studying it. So you just have to do a little bit of background research.
Okay.
But yeah, it is. It is a very important issue. A very important issue. So yeah, I would encourage you to.
Doctor,
Yeah, Effie.
what if me and my partners do about LGBT, or is it a sensitive issue?
No, well, I mean, sensitive or not, it is a very important issue. It's a real issue. So no, you should feel free to do it. It's perfectly okay with me.
Okay.
I mean, this is a class on youth. Sorry, this is a class on youth development, and it is an issue that is affecting young people today. So no, I have no problem if you do that.
Okay, maybe I'm doing the LGBT things about maybe the acceptance of a community towards LGBT in Malaysia, something like that related to youth, or how did they can grow in this kind of, which is like we know that Malaysia is denying the LGBT things, and how they develop their self, or they can grow their career in this kind of community, something like that.
Yeah, sure. I think that's fine. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. No, these are real issues. I mean, look, youth in this class, we cannot shy away from, you know, even though they may be sensitive, but you cannot, you know, but just by sort of denying that they exist, or burying your head in the sand and pretending that they don't exist, that's not going to help anyone. It's not going to make the problem go away, that's for sure. So whatever it is, the most important thing is to understand it as best we can, because you cannot address any issue or any problem unless you fully understand it. And the whole point of this kind of an assignment and this kind of a program is to really understand young people, understand what young people are going through. Like Hazik said earlier, understanding their experiences. You know, so if you want to do that, you know, you want to do your project on that, what is it like? You know, what is the experience like? And then how can we help, you know, or how can we come up with a program to sort of help them or whatever? I mean, absolutely, this is real. So okay, so let's see, there's a question from Fatin. Professor, will be many pairs, is it okay if some? Yeah, that's no problem. If you get the same topic, it's perfectly okay, as long as you work on it independently with your partner. No problem. Yeah, naturally there's going to be probably some overlap with topics. That's not a problem. For that boyfriend. Okay, so it's 1 o'clock. So thank you very much for your participation, everyone. And so I think that for the rest of the semester, we will be using our Thursday classes to work on your assignments like this. So I'll be raising different topics related to the assignment, and then this will be a good chance for you guys to ask questions or to get clarification about what you're doing. Okay, so please feel free to bring your questions about your assignment to the Thursday class. Okay. All right, time to makan. All right, so inshallah, see you guys next week.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
Thank you, Prof.
Enjoy
Thank
online.
you.
Thank you, Prof. Have a nice
Have a
day.
nice day ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Prof.
Kasih. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.